I slept late. I had been in Alaska, way up in as far north as you can go in Alaska, in the tundra, in the mountainous tundra, in a mountain range called the Brooks Range. I
Right.
had been doing almost like an expedition. Me and one friend, we had been out there for 2 weeks. I came back the first week of September, and I was dead tired when I came back after that. I was tired. I slept late. Monique, that's her first name. My wife's name is Monique. Monique was up and about, and the telephone rings. She picks it up. It's my brother who lives in Sweden who calls at around, I'd say 9:30. He tells Monique, very briefly, the World Trade Center has been hit by an airplane. Watch it on television, and he hangs up. Monique turns on the television. I'm sleeping in my own bedroom. She sees this havoc, these incredible burning towers. She runs down to my bedroom, opens the door, I wake up, and she says, the World Trade Center has been hit by an airplane. My brother has a one engine prop, small airplane, and I thought that it was a one engine prop that had flown into World Trade Center because my brother has a one engine prop. He calls us and tells us, or tells my wife, that an airplane had flown into the World Trade Center. So I thought, yeah, it's a little airplane, no big deal. Then my wife, when I turned on the television in my bedroom, and there I saw the whole unbelievable.
Yeah.
I still cannot believe it's true what I saw with the burning towers. Both towers had been hit. Like I said, it was around 9:30 or so. I quickly get dressed, put my wallet and my keys in my pocket, put a camera in my pocket. I always have a little point and shoot film camera, and I didn't have a digital camera at that time, but a film camera. And I quickly ran up to our flat roof, from which we have a 100% clear view of the towers, and they were burning. The flames and the black smoke was incredibly visible. I mean, we saw more than half of the towers from our roof, and my wife and I were just standing there, dumbfounded. And I subconsciously decided, I didn't reason, I just decided I have to do something. I have to go down and help. I have to go to I have to go to World Trade Center. And I can tell you this also, that a few years earlier I had read in a magazine article that the World Trade Center, fully occupied, had about 50,000 people in the two towers. And I knew that thousands of people are dying right in front of me as I'm standing here on this roof. I have to do something. So we both quickly ran down the 4 or 5 flights to the ground level. My wife went out on the street. I got on my bike. I was at that time an extremely fast, very nimble cyclist, and I biked all over New York City at that time. And I knew exactly, and had done it maybe 1,000 times before. I knew exactly how to get on the Brooklyn Bridge, bike across the bridge into Manhattan, and end up literally at the doorfront of City Hall, which is sort of at the base of the Brooklyn Bridge on the Manhattan side. So I bike towards the bridge very quickly. It takes only like a minute or two to get to the bridge from our house. When I hear and then look up and see this incredible implosion and cloud of smoke, um, unbelievable. And quickly I managed to get the camera out of my pocket. I take a couple of pictures. I'm not shocked. I'm just I'm just have one thing in my mind. I have to go and help the people who are burning to death, who are dying in these two towers. I never thought that they would collapse. But here one had collapsed. I never thought the other one would collapse, which it did eventually. When I get up on, up on the ramp that leads onto the bridge, there were police officers there. and they tried to stop me. They yelled, "Stop, stop, stop." I just disregarded them. I yelled back something, and I just kept on biking. And now I'm all along on the bridge. There are 3 lanes, Manhattan bound. I'm biking on that bridge all along. No police cars, no fire trucks, nothing, no ambulances, just me. I have the whole bridge for myself. I finally arrived on the Manhattan side, and that's where I'm hit by the smoke, the smell, the dust, and the visibility. The lack, the closer I get to ground zero after I've hit Manhattan, the less the visibility is. And I slowed down and I looked around. I'm now about 3 blocks from World Trade Center. Take a few snapshots. I asked a police officer, I'm here to help. What can I do? Just get the hell out of here. Get away from here. It's just get out of here. And I disregarded him. I biked slowly through and by the way, I was met by hundreds, if not thousands, of people who work in World Trade Center, all covered by dust, walking towards me. They take up the street, the sidewalk, so I slowly have to bike towards ground zero. When I'm about a block away, I realize I cannot see anything. It's too dusty. I have to think about something else. And there is, at that time, that still is the same hospital. They just have changed the name. There is a small hospital just a few minutes by bike from the World Trade Center. I bike to the hospital. I enter the building. I talk to a nurse or some hospital employee and I ask, by the way, I thought I would see hundreds of injured people. I thought I would see dying people all over the hospital. There was nothing. It was like a normal day. Nothing was going on in the hospital. I was very surprised, happily surprised. I was given a bottle of water and a face mask and told, you have to leave. You have to leave this part of Manhattan. Get out of here. I, again, disregarded them because the only reason I really went to Manhattan was to help. It was a little bit, I must admit, a little bit of adventure. It's like going to Vietnam. It was, adventure, of course. And this was mostly to help, but also it was, I have to admit, a little bit of action, a little bit of adventure. So that is what kept on driving me to continue bicycling towards the still standing North Tower, is to help. Basically, that was my main reason, to help whatever I could do. I didn't know what I could do, and I've been told by a police officer and a nurse to get out of there, but I disregarded that. And as I'm biking a street straight up, I can see the tower in front of me, burning with the smoke coming out at the top third. I'm about a few hundred feet, I'm a block away from the tower when it implodes. And it happens in like 3, 4 seconds. It's time enough for me to see the tornado of dust and smoke flying towards me with an incredible speed. I have time enough to turn around my bike 180 degrees and quickly out sprint the oncoming cloud that just roars down the street like in a canyon. And I bike down towards the East River, and then I head north to try to get on to the Brooklyn Bridge, which of course is there are thousands or more people at this time when both buildings have collapsed, and they are all trying to get on the Brooklyn Bridge. I realize it's impossible. It's going to take me forever to try to get on this bridge. I have a bike, it's very fast. I bike up to the Manhattan Bridge further north in Manhattan. And Manhattan Bridge, because it is further from ground zero, it was not as crowded. I could get onto the bridge. I dismounted my bike, of course, and walked my bike together with thousands of people who very solemnly and slowly, quietly, all very collected. Nobody was screaming and yelling. Nobody was going crazy. Nobody you know, I'm surprised how quiet everything was, how organized everything. Everybody seemed to be an organized person. Everybody knew what they had to do. And that's what I was met by when I arrived in Manhattan, having crossed the Brooklyn Bridge. That now, in retrospect, I remember that it was everybody was pretty quiet. Nobody was screaming, yelling. There were no ambulances. There were some sirens, but they were in the background. They were a few blocks away. I didn't really hear them that well. You expect everything is like crazy. People are dying left and right. I expect it like to be combat in Vietnam, like a firefight. But no, it's very quiet and nobody says anything. People just walk.
Well, I wanted to ask you because, you have this experience at 9/11, but of course, decades before, you were at Khe Sanh in Vietnam when Khe Sanh came under siege, when it's bombarded by North Vietnamese artillery for day after day after day, and there's really nothing you can do. You're a foot soldier, and foot soldiers are not able to respond during this time when Khe Sanh is just under siege and is being bombarded in one of the biggest battles of the war. And I'm wondering if, as you're making your way to the towers, trying to get there, as you see the second tower implode and disintegrate, as you're looking in the faces of these people, um, did did your Vietnam experience come back to you in any way? Of course, it's very different. 9/11 and Khe Sanh are completely different things, but they're both very extreme things that involve, um, suffering and danger and those kinds of things. Do you have a recollection of in any way your Vietnam experience kind of, coming to you in a way that seemed relevant in these moments when you're responding to 9/11?
Well, yes. I think I have to start with boot camp, Marine Corps boot camp, Paris Island, South Carolina. Going through boot camp, I think for me was something I needed. It was good for me to go through 8 weeks of boot camp. It made me a better person, a stronger person, more self-assured, more secure person. And the war in Vietnam made me, in a way, even more secure, even though it was a horrible war. It made me a better, stronger person. When I came back from Vietnam, I was mentally stronger, etc., etc. I was a better person. And so, in a way, boot camp and Vietnam had prepared me for 9/11. 9/11 was, it just, I didn't have to go through a thought process that I was going to go there and try to help. It just came automatically. It just popped into my head, immediately. After having gone through Khe Sanh and then combat, firefights, ambush, being very, very seriously wounded, almost killed, and coming out a stronger person, mentally and eventually even physically, maybe even stronger. Even I had a disability and I still have the same disability. I became overall a stronger, better person. And having become a better and stronger person made me ready to go to ground zero. It made me feel very secure in going there and
Mm.
I was not afraid. Not 1 millisecond was I afraid that something was going to happen to me. And I think you have to be trained. Well, some people are born like that, but they are rare. But I think most of us have to go through, like boot camp, for example, to make you ready to face something like Khe Sanh or, in this case, World Trade Center, both towers burning.
How would you describe your own reaction to or the impact all of this had on you?
Well, I have to go back a little bit, and that is, I knew that there were 50,000 people in the building, in the two towers. Both towers had collapsed. In my mind, and nobody knew anything about the casualties. Nobody knew anything about the number of casualties. In my mind, there were maybe 20,000, 10,000, 15, 25,000 people killed. That was the worst for me when I went to bed. I thought it must have been an enormous catastrophe. It took the firefighters and the rescue workers months to finally come up with a figure, and that is 2,990 something, close to 3,000 died in the World Trade Center towers. But I didn't know that. I thought, like I said, there were many, many thousands who had died, and that was, to me, the worst. Like there was nobody could. It was so frustrating. I didn't know anything. It was just very sad, very, very sad.
Now, is it 2 days later that you decide that you're gonna go back to Ground Zero
It was the following morning,
the following morning?
on 9/12, the following morning, I told Monique, I'm going to go back to 9/11. I mean, I'm going to go back. Already they had given it on television. Somebody had come up with the ground zero. I don't know who minted that phrase, but I'm going to go back to ground zero, I told Monique. She's a game. She said, okay, I'll go with you. She's a very good cyclist also. So I led the way. We biked across, not the Brooklyn Bridge, because you see, we had already read or seen or heard it on television that all of the lower tip of Manhattan was completely barricaded by hundreds and hundreds of National Guard soldiers and New York City police officers. But I knew in my mind that I know Manhattan so well. I know it's blindfolded, so I can find a way through this barricade of physical barricade, but also hundreds and hundreds of police officers and soldiers. And sure enough, I biked across the Manhattan Bridge, which is further north in Manhattan, and then down on Little Street, down towards the East River. And sure enough, I found a place where we could, unseen, squeeze by I can't remember exactly where it was, but we succeeded. We both were now in where nobody's supposed to be except firefighters and rescue workers. And I led Monique, and we biked around to the very, very southern tip to the Battery Park, and then up along Broadway, and then we came closer and closer to the imploded towers, and the smoke, that morning was enormous. The black smoke coming out of the ground was humongous. It was not as bad as it was when the towers were still standing, but it was a tremendous amount of smoke, black smoke. So the smoke blocked a lot of the what was left of the two towers. But we were a block away from, because physically we couldn't just go any closer. It was full of metal and steel, aluminum, you name it. It was just burned cars, crushed fire trucks. It was impossible to move around. But they had already cleared the street, which is, I guess, it's Broadway I'm talking about.
You're saying that you got within about a block of Ground Zero, but
Yeah,
then by
one
that
block,
point, there
one
was so
block
much,
of,
so much debris in the streets, you
yeah,
couldn't get any further?
yeah. Nobody bothered us. In other words, no firemen, no cops, or any other official uniform person asked, what the heck are you doing here? Nobody asked us that, because they took for granted that anybody who is here, they have business to be here, because nobody can make it through the National Guard and the police. Nobody can get through that. That's hermetically closed. But we managed to get through it, but nobody hassled us, and I took some pictures. Such a sad place. the fire, there were still enormous fires burning out of the enormous heaps of steel, enormous fires. And with that fire, the heat of the fire carried burning paper, burning office paper, like have, this kind of paper. They were just about 100, about 1,000. They were flying up like birds, and then they slowly fall to the ground, and they charred. Everyone was charred, more or less. And I kept a couple of those pieces of paper, some regular office paper. That's my physical memory of 9/11.
Now, as the days go by, I imagine you begin to witness, what we saw on the news. People are posting photographs of their friends, of their family members, trying to find them. What do you remember as we get 2, 3, 4, 5 days past 9/11? What are the things that most stand in your memory?
Well, it's what you just said. The posters you mentioned, they could not be put up near 9/11. They were put up much further north in Manhattan, where people had free liberty to walk around as they pleased. And more of these handmade, people already then had their own printers at home, and they could print a photograph of their husband. Usually, most most people who were killed, who died there, were men, male office workers, but a lot of women, hardly any children at all. The enormous number of posters that were taped onto fences and light posts and storefront windows, walls. But I would say more and more open up Lower Manhattan. And finally, the rescue workers and the crews that started to finally clear the steel and all the other stuff from the ground zero, they were now fenced in maybe a 12-block area. So around there, people could walk around. And there, along the fence that encircled those 12, 13, 14 blocks, there you had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of posters, homemade, of the face of a missed one, a loved one.
Wow.
And that is something you never forget.
How far out from ground zero was, this white dust that gets all over everything? I guess, so much has just been pulverized into dust.
Yeah,
So how far out did that go where the dust was thick from the
it covered, because of the wind, particularly those days following 9/11, we had beautiful days, blue sky, not a cloud, and the wind always comes from the west. So the dust moved in a direction from World Trade Center, from Ground Zero towards Battery Park, and then over near Carver to certain parts of Brooklyn. So in lower, in other words, south of, or I should say southeast of Ground Zero, you had a lot of that fine powder covering everything. The buildings, the door frames, the window frames, the cars, everything you can imagine was covered by dust. We saw that on the morning of 9/12, and we biked through it. And that in itself was weird and almost surprising, even though now when I reflect on it, it makes so much sense that you had probably millions of tons of debris. The weight of these two towers must have been millions of tons. And a lot of that became dust and slowly but surely fell to the ground. As far, quite far away in parts of Brooklyn, they had soot and the smell, and they had the dust, the fine dust.
How long was it before life in that part of New York started to feel somewhat normal again?
Took a long time. When it started to get dusk time, a little bit dark, I decided to go down to the waterfront. We live very close to the waterfront, but I have to walk a few more blocks to come to the water itself. And that's where I took pictures, I think 2 or 3 that I sent you, where you can see the sky starting to be dark, the fire, you can see the redness of the fire from the burning, from the 2 collapsed towers. You see like the silhouette of a couple of young men standing on top of something to see more of the fire burning on Ground Zero. Those crushed cars are stored by the state of New York beneath the Manhattan Bridge in Brooklyn. And they're protected there. First of all, it's city-owned land. So the cops, police department, or some city agents, they had all the rights in the world to store these crushed cars. Mostly police cars, fire department vehicles, fire trucks, things like that. But I noted that the smoke is still coming from the 2 collapsed towers. So it's taken a month or 2 months because that fire never seemed to end. It just kept on burning and burning and burning. And there was no way they could extinguish the fire. It just had to burn itself out.